I walked across the graduation stage by myself, my name echoing through a hall filled with families who weren't there for me. In the front row, 3 vacant seats stared back, colder than the February chill lingering outside. As I shook the dean's hand, my parents were miles away throwing a Super Bowl party, laughing, eating, celebrating everything except me. I managed to hold myself together until I reached the parking lot, my diploma sliding in my grip. That was the instant something inside me cracked, and something else finally came alive. I didn't realize it then, but the decision I made next would alter my life forever. My name is Annabelle Rowan, and the morning of my graduation began with a kind of hope I should have known not to trust. I woke before my alarm, nerves humming beneath my skin, the thin fabric of my rented gown hanging from the closet door like a promise I had earned piece by piece. 6 years of late-night classes, early work shifts, and silent sacrifices had brought me to that moment. I made coffee in the dark, letting the warmth settle in my hands, allowing myself, just briefly, to imagine that maybe today my family would meet me halfway. I wasn't foolish enough to expect a celebration. I simply imagined my mother's gentle smile somewhere in the crowd. My father lifting his hand in that easy wave of his. My brother acting like he wasn't bored. Simple moments other families took for granted. Small gestures that would have said, "You matter to us. We see you." The house stayed quiet as I got dressed, slipping into the only heels I owned, the second-hand pair I'd bought for job interviews. I checked my phone more times than I care to admit, waiting for a text saying they were on their way or asking where to park. Nothing arrived. Instead, an old family group chat buzzed to life with messages about snacks for the Super Bowl party. My mother sent a photo of her signature dip perfectly arranged on the coffee table, the caption overflowing with exclamation points. My father joked about which team would let him down this year. Mason bragged about a bet he'd just placed. No one mentioned the ceremony. Not one of them asked if I was nervous, excited, or even okay. Still, I told myself they'd show up, that maybe this was how they dealt with their nerves. Distraction pretending to be denial. I held on to that thought like a fragile thread, keeping the whole day from unraveling. At the auditorium, families poured through the entrance in bursts of color. Flowers, balloons, children weaving between legs while proud parents tried to organize photos. My seat was near the front, and the ushers had reserved 3 chairs with my last name printed neatly on the backs. Seeing them there felt unreal, set aside for people I had spent years trying to make proud. I smoothed my gown and checked my phone again. Still nothing. My chest tightened, but I forced the feeling down, refusing to let panic take over. I sat, staring at those empty chairs as the lights dimmed. A small, foolish voice inside me whispered, "Maybe they'll slip in late. Maybe they're parking. Maybe traffic's bad." Then another photo appeared on my screen, the living room glowing with the TV's pre-game show. My father's hand holding up a beer in the corner of the frame. Mason caught mid-laugh. That was when the truth finally settled, heavy and undeniable. They weren't coming. They never intended to. The parking lot felt colder than I expected. February wind whipped between the cars, cutting through my gown like it had something to prove. I made it to the back row before my legs gave out. One moment I was walking, clutching my diploma with both hands, struggling to breathe past the tightness in my throat. The next, I was sitting on the curb, the world blurring around me. My phone buzzed again. Another picture from the party. My mother smiling beside a tray of wings, my father lifting a glass, Mason posing with friends like he'd just won something. Not one of them wrote, "How did it go, Belle?" or "Send us a picture," or "We're sorry we missed it." The silence spoke louder than any words could have. Tears fell onto my gown before I realized I was crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind. Those might have helped. This was quieter, the kind that comes from pressure finally giving way, each tear carrying years of swallowed disappointment. I wiped my face on my sleeve and let out a short, hollow laugh. I had crossed that stage alone while my family threw a watch party for a game they'd seen 100 times before. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the crowds to thin. Long enough for the ache in my chest to sharpen into something else. Clarity. Or maybe it was the first spark of anger finally allowed to exist. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't expect much. But this time, it wasn't my family. It was my Aunt Helena. Saw the ceremony photos online. Proud of you, sweetheart. The words were brief, yet they settled inside me in a way I couldn't shake. Someone had noticed me today. Someone who wasn't asking for anything. I stood there, staring at the screen as my breath clouded the cold air. My diploma rested across my knees like a question with no answer. What came next? Going home and acting like it didn't sting wasn't possible. I couldn't force a grin, laugh at my father's humor, or nod along to Mason's explanations. Something within me had shifted too much to ever fit back where it was. That was when I opened the travel app. There was nothing dramatic about it. No swelling music, no movie-style moment. Just me on chilled concrete, thumb hovering over a list of flights I'd saved long ago. I'd always brushed them off as fantasies, trips for a future when I had time, when I had money, when my family didn't depend on me. But they always did. And that dependence had taken everything from me. My thumb moved before fear had a chance to stop it. One-way ticket. Colorado. A retreat I'd bookmarked during a sleepless night, promising myself I'd go once life calmed down. Life was never going to calm down. Not with them. The confirmation email hit my inbox. A small breath slipped out of me, unsteady, but real. For the first time in years, I hadn't chosen them. I'd chosen myself. From the plane window, Colorado looked unreal. Snow dusted the mountains as if sugar had been sprinkled across the peaks, soft and untouched. I leaned my forehead against the cold glass, the steady engine hum easing my breathing. It was the first real quiet I'd felt in years. No buzzing group chats, no surprise emergencies, no guilt creeping in like a draft. Just white ridgelines, open sky, and the unfamiliar thought, maybe I don't have to go back. The retreat was nestled against a hillside thick with pines. The lobby smelled of cedar and citrus, warm enough to melt the last of the cold clinging to me. The woman at the front desk greeted me with a gentleness I wasn't ready for. Welcome, Annabelle. We're glad you're here. No one had said my name like that in a long time, without conditions. My room faced a frozen lake. I stood at the window, watching the ice catch the late afternoon light, and noticed my shoulders slowly easing downward. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding myself. I told myself this trip was only a pause, a reset before returning to Hartford and stepping back into the role I'd always played. Dutiful daughter. Dependable sister. Walking wallet. That illusion shattered the next morning. After a massage, I checked my phone out of habit. 15 missed messages. 13 from my family. Mom, can you send a few hundred? Dad needs help with a bill. Just temporary. Mason lost my card again. You know how it is. Not one asked about the ceremony. Not one said congratulations. The last message came through as I stared at the list. It was from Helena Bell. Honey, check your credit report now. My stomach tightened. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the app, and waited for it to load. When it did, the air rushed out of me. Accounts I didn't recognize. Store cards I'd never opened. A personal loan I'd never signed. Inquiry after inquiry, stacked as if someone had been shopping with my identity, piece by piece. I scrolled slowly, dread chilling my blood. The dates matched every emergency they'd asked for over the past month. Money they hadn't needed. Money they'd replaced with something far worse. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. This wasn't just carelessness. It wasn't even casual betrayal. It was intentional. Planned. They hadn't only skipped my graduation, they'd used my future to pay for their present. I shut my eyes, gripping the phone until my knuckles ached. The pain was deep, but beneath it, something unexpected rose, steady, hot. Anger, yes, but also clarity. This was where the story turned. Not when they didn't show up for me, but when I finally saw them for who they were. By the time I called Helena back, my hands were calm. She didn't sound surprised. I was hoping I was wrong, she said gently. You need a lawyer, sweetheart. Someone who understands this territory. Her words felt like a map, a way forward. For years, I'd let guilt make my decisions. I'd allowed love to excuse damage. But standing there with the mountains silent beyond the window, I understood something simple and crushing. If I didn't stand up for myself now, no one ever would. I flew back to Hartford with a folder thick with statements, bills, and inquiries. Everything Carmen said I'd need if I wanted my life back. The clouds outside the plane window were calm, but I wasn't. The retreat had given me clarity. Clarity didn't erase fear. I knew exactly how my family would react once the money stopped. What I didn't know was how fast it would happen. My apartment door had barely shut behind me when the pounding started. Heavy, frantic blows that shook the frame. "Annabelle," my father yelled, "open this door right now." My heart jolted. I moved silently toward the peephole. His face filled the glass, red, enraged. Behind him, my mother gripped her sweater with exaggerated distress, while Mason scrolled through his phone as if he were waiting for a show, not trying to get inside. The pounding grew louder. "Belle," my mother begged. "We need to talk. This is important." My phone rang. It was my landlord. "They're demanding access to your apartment," she said. "Do you want police involved?" "Yes," I whispered. "Please call." Even through the door, my father caught the word. "Police? Really? We're your family." But family no longer meant to me what it did to them. When the officers arrived, the hallway filled with overlapping voices. My parents insisted it was all a misunderstanding. Mason claimed they only needed a few things. The officers escorted them away with firm warnings, but the sting of their accusations lingered long after the noise died down. I sank onto my couch, hands shaking, and understood the truth. I wasn't safe with them anywhere near my life. The next morning, I went back to Carmen's office. She arranged my paperwork with a precision that steadied me. When she finished, she tapped the stack lightly. "This is sufficient, Annabelle. We can move forward." Within a week, a restraining order was approved. My credit was locked. My accounts were secured. For the first time, boundaries stood around me like small protective walls, delicate, but real. Then an email arrived from Portland. A promotion. A transfer. An opportunity to begin again in a city where no one knew the version of me who apologized for taking up space. I accepted immediately. Packing felt like shedding an old skin. With Tessa's help, I boxed years of exhaustion into cardboard and watched the movers load everything onto a truck headed west. When I boarded the plane and Hartford shrank beneath me, I told myself the worst was over. I was wrong, but in a way that would ultimately save me. Portland was everything my old life wasn't. Quiet, respectful, unobtrusive. My new team valued my work. My apartment overlooked the city lights. For months, I told no one the full story. Healing came slowly, like warmth creeping back into numb fingers. Then I was invited to speak at a business leadership conference about financial independence. I hesitated until Carmen said, "Your voice could help someone who thinks they're alone." So I agreed. The ballroom was massive. Rows of chairs, a stage bathed in soft light, conversation humming like a low tide. Backstage, I reviewed my notes, smoothed my blazer, and tried to calm my trembling hands. When I stepped up to the podium, polite applause followed. I adjusted the microphone. "Thank you for having me," I began. "Today, I want to talk about..." A crash from the back of the room cut me off. At first, I thought something had fallen. Then I heard the voice I'd spent months trying to escape. "That's our daughter." My father's shout sliced through the hall. My chest tightened as hundreds of heads turned. The doors flew open, and my family surged in like a storm. My father flushed with rage, my mother wearing practiced anguish, Mason holding his phone up to record. "She abandoned us," my father thundered. "Left us with nothing while she ran off to get rich." Confused murmurs rippled through the audience. Cameras lifted. My mother clutched her chest. "Annabelle, sweetheart, please talk to us. You're tearing this family apart." My hands clenched around the podium. Every instinct screamed to shrink, to apologize, to make myself small enough for their comfort. But something steadier rose inside me, a voice shaped by Carmen's guidance and the certainty that I had nothing left to lose. I leaned toward the microphone. "Security," I said evenly. "They are violating a court order. Please remove them." The room fell silent. Then security stepped in. My father bellowed, "A court order. Against your own parents." Mason moved forward, still filming. "Tell them how you froze our accounts. Tell them how cold you are." I met his gaze. "I protected myself. From all of you." Gasps swept through the crowd. Before another word could spill out, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Douglas Rowan and Mason Rowan." A detective appeared in the ballroom doorway. "We have warrants for financial fraud and identity misuse. Please step forward." The room erupted into whispers. My father sputtered, "This is absurd. We're her family." The detective didn't hesitate. Family doesn't excuse criminal behavior. As the officers snapped the cuffs into place, my mother rushed toward me, her eyes shining, not with regret, but with fear. "Annabelle, stop this. We need you." I shook my head. "You needed my credit. You needed my silence. You never needed me." Her expression collapsed, but for the first time, it didn't pull at my guilt. It floated past me, thin as smoke. When they were finally released, the ballroom fell into an almost unreal quiet. Hundreds of faces turned my way, not in judgment, but in anticipation. I stepped back up to the microphone, took a slow breath, and started again. My presentation today was meant to focus on budgeting strategies, but maybe what we truly need to talk about is this. What happens when the biggest danger to your financial security comes from the people you love, and what it takes to walk away? No one glanced at their phones. No one shifted in their seats. I spoke honestly, not with resentment, but with clarity. I told them about the empty chairs at my graduation, the tears in the parking lot, the retreat where I finally chose myself, the discovery of every stolen credit line. I talked about fear, and I talked about freedom. When I finished, the silence held for a single breath. Then the crowd stood. Applause poured over me in a way I had never experienced before, not because they pitied me, but because they understood the courage required to rebuild a life from the ruins of a family that never showed up for you. And there, on that stage, another city, I understood something both simple and profound. I wasn't alone anymore. The investigation progressed faster than I had expected. Once the warrants were served and Carmen guided each step, the truth emerged in stark, undeniable paperwork. Accounts opened without my approval, loan checks tied directly to my father and Mason, patterns of manipulation reaching back farther than I wanted to admit. The court made the restraining order permanent. My credit was restored, piece by piece. For the first time in my adult life, my future didn't feel like something my family could reach into and destroy. Portland became more than just a new beginning. It became home. My office walls slowly filled with pieces of a life I had chosen, photos with co-workers who had become friends, a small plant Tessa insisted I keep alive, and finally the framed diploma above my desk, not to prove anything to them, but to remind myself how far I had traveled on my own. Some nights, echoes of old guilt still surfaced. But now they faded quickly, drowned out by something steadier. Safety, peace, the quiet but undeniable truth that I had saved myself. Standing backstage at my next speaking event, I looked out at rows of people waiting. People who chose to be there, who showed up without being asked. I brushed my fingers along the edge of my note cards and felt a calm certainty settle in. Choosing myself hadn't ruined my life. It had rebuilt it. And if someone out there needs permission to walk away from a kind of love that only takes, maybe my story can be that permission. If you've ever felt that way too, share your story and subscribe for more.